I left home after graduating high school to join an organization that serves people in every region of the world. During those 7 months, I traveled to 9 countries with my team. We met hundreds of people and had the opportunity of hearing most of their stories. We saw joy, we saw provision, and we saw transformation. But we also saw pain, lack of opportunity, and many forms of exploitation. The exploitation stuck with me wherever we went, and I started to see trends to what was going on, exploitative trends. In some countries, people were taken advantage of by corrupt companies or government agencies and paid little to nothing. In other countries, resources were being used more than they were readily available, causing deficits. Or the resources that were available were tainted or destroyed by an industry that did not care to preserve them. It didn't matter where we went. Something or someone was being exploited. After these conversations, I started talking to these people, and they were curious about what caused this exploitation. And we started to wonder why the information, so easily accessible for research, just wasn't common knowledge. When I returned home 6 months ago and rejoined a culture known for its consumerism, we started digging deeper as to what caused our nation to obtain one of the highest rates of consumption and waste in the world. Whatever made us start producing at the capacity we are now? What made us push production limitations, which in turn made us push moral boundaries? Thinking through and studying our recent history, the current trends started to make some sense. In the mid-20th century, after World War I and the Great Depression, Americans had figured out how to get by with minimal possessions and resources. But after World War II broke out and brought its incredible production boom along with it, Americans realized that the technological advancements made could serve the people by making food, clothing, and gadgets cheaper, quicker, and more accessible to the masses. That, at the time, brought a level of financial and social equality when it came to purchases. Middle-class Americans could now afford to buy what upper-class Americans were buying. But after the war ended, no American wanted to return to the previous frugality that had become a norm, because why would we? So we can see from our history, originally, consumers needed companies to push these production limitations in order to meet an actual need. But like many things started with good intentions, these incredible production rates began being outsourced to companies outside US borders for cheaper labor. This reduced how ethically companies did business because it was no longer done on US soil. So how the raw materials were grown, how the products were made, and how employees were treated was no longer the priority. It became about how fast companies could make these products and how cheaply the entire process could be done. So speed, accentuated by demand, became the driving force, and quality was thrown out the window completely. So we as consumers need to understand then that when speed is the most important factor in any industry, possible areas of exploitation become overlooked. So what can we do? The list of industries that exploits its resources is a hefty one. Obvious on this list are the oil and gas industry, which terribly pollutes the air, the ground, and the water quality, the pornography industry, which exploits and often traffics its workers, the produce industry, where more and more of its crops are genetically modified and the use of pesticides has skyrocketed. But there is one industry on this list that is so broad, so decentralized, and so polluting that exploitation is a byproduct on a pandemic level. This is the fast fashion industry. This term, fast fashion, is what we can use to define cheap clothing made quickly by mass market retailers. From start to finish, seed to sale, the fast fashion industry has found too many ways to cut corners, exploit its workers, and sell us on an idea that says we need excess in order to obtain success. So while we in this culture live by the mantra, ignorance is bliss, other cultures, other families, and other individuals are paying the ultimate price for our consumption. Let's look at the very start of this process. Unless specifically organic, the cotton that we find in our clothing today is completely different than what we would have found in clothing just 70 years ago. The cotton plant itself has been re-engineered and genetically modified in order to be more resistant to weather, weeds, and pests. supposedly allowing farmers to reap a greater harvest. The problem is, the company supplying these seeds has absolutely monopolized the cottonseed industry. In some countries, specifically ones in Southeast Asia and the Middle East, these corrupt companies are the only ones supplying seeds to local farmers. So while these farmers are getting themselves into debt to buy this resistant product, the seeds are not delivering on their promises. More often than not, these seeds require more fertilizers and more pesticides. Even worse, studies have shown that pesticides should be considered ecological narcotics, meaning the more you use them, the more you need them. This entire process should be considered an industrialization of agriculture. Dr. Pritpal Singh has been studying the effects of pesticides on several communities in Punjab, India. In communities where people live and work near bodies of water containing chemical runoff, he has recognized a rise in the rate of birth defects, cancers, and mental illnesses. In an interview with producers from the True Cost documentary, Dr. Singh is honest about the tolls of the fast fashion industry on these communities. He even went as far as to say parents have ultimately accepted the death of their children, that they are awaiting the death of their kids. Because the fashion industry requires so many steps for its completion, it makes some sense that it would employ 1 out of every 6 people currently alive today. That makes it the most labor-dependent industry on earth. And I'll admit that it does make some sense that such a labor-dependent industry would hold a few risks. But at what point are the risks too high? When the ground and the water are so polluted that they become unlivable? Or when it is commonplace for parents to accept the death of their children? How about when factory fires and collapses happen so often that the media doesn't even cover them anymore? Neglect by garment factory workers or garment factory managers has been made obvious by extreme cases, especially the Rana Plaza building collapse in 2013. Garment factory managers were retold repeatedly by workers that there were cracks in the building's foundation, but they chose to ignore them. And it didn't take long before the entire factory collapsed, with thousands of workers still inside. The death toll was the highest we have ever seen in an incident like this, killing just over 1,000 people. And if that's not bad enough, it seriously injured over 2,000. So this young lady right here, let me go back. She lost both of her legs in the collapse that day. Not only did she lose her own body, but she lost friends and family members. So thinking through all of this, how do we combat it? How do we stop it? How do we make an impact? All of the solutions are really very simple. If you, as the buyer, don't like it, you don't have to buy into it. We have been taught to believe that all of our problems can be solved through more and more and more consumption. We have been taught to believe that companies selling us $5 t-shirts are saving us money, when in fact they are making us poorer because we keep buying clothing when we don't need it. The truth is, the economic market is set up to our advantage. It's made to accommodate us. We've been taught to treat clothing like it's a bar of soap, something that you use until it's gone and then buy another one afterwards. But the truth is, clothing isn't supposed to be used up. It doesn't need to be. It shouldn't be bought in the mindset that it's disposable. We shouldn't be doing that. So when all of this comes together, when we are constantly fed propaganda by the media, what is truth? How do we even search for truth? I believe truth can be found when you look inside your closet. Do the things in there make you happy? Do they complete you as a person? Or do they make you feel like you need more in order to keep up with trends set by the industry itself? When an issue is this big, it seems like too much for any one person to make a real, lasting impact. But I'm here to tell you that you can make an impact. Instead of going out and buying new clothing when you're bored of it, do something else? What if you went to the thrift store and bought something there? What if you went to ethical companies? All of my life, I have been told, if you put your mind to it, you can achieve anything. Well, here I am before you. My mind is to it. I want to see the fruit of living in a community where people are so conscientious of their actions and of their consumption that exploitation is no longer a byproduct. I don't believe that once people like you, or you, I can see your faces, or you, become educated about the reality of what is going on in the fashion industry, about the boundaries that we have collectively crossed, that you will continue ignoring them. I can't believe that. To me, it seems to be human nature to pick up a cause and believe in something. Perhaps we should start here, collectively combating exploitation with our knowledge and our actions every day, every choice, and every purchase. I, for one, believe in us. Thank you.